here is a cricket farmer? Any, get some raised hands? Okay, that's good for me to kind of gauge my audience here. Yeah, you kind of look my name is James Ricci. I'm the entomologist and the co-founder of Post, and we're certainly not as experienced as the Armstrongs or pretty much many of the people here. We're very novice, but we are starting to rear crickets, and we're starting to learn a lot more about the process of rearing crickets. And we're trying to contribute to the field, and one of the ways we're starting to do that is to look at and research pest control on cricket farms. So, obviously we're still very new, so we are running into some of the common pests that cricket farms run into, but to augment that, we've also been surveying other cricket farms that we work with. Unfortunately, I can't say any of the names in the spirit of anonymity, but suffice it to say there have been a few across the United States. This is not an exhaustive list. Please don't come up to me after this talk and be like, you didn't mention this one obscure pest of crickets, that's my favorite pest. I'll make fun of you for not paying attention and not hearing this part of the talk. But we are starting to put together kind of a list of pests to look at controlling and managing on cricket farms. So how do you do that? How do you kill bugs on a bug farm without killing all the wrong bugs? Sometimes you do kill all the wrong bugs. That is very bad in the learning experience, and we move forward from that. But according to the University of California, we use integrated pest management. This is an ecosystem-based strategy that focuses on long-term prevention of pests and their damage through a combination of techniques such as biological control, habitat manipulation, modification of cultural practices, and the use of resistant varieties. As you all heard on Mark Sanchez's podcast, this is a great example of what Jack Armstrong calls too many decimal points. This is very complex. I just call it using every tool at your disposal to control everything possible in terms of pests, putting a bunch of things together and creating a multifaceted approach. That's why integrated pest management is the standard now for larger commercial operations and for more large-scale pest control practices. So a good first example, dermestids. This is something that every cricket farm we spoke to railed against. It's something that's all over the place. Dermestids admittedly are not the largest pest of cricket farms in terms of damage level, but they do decrease the value of your product. They're more of a pest for places like museums and taxidermists where they're feeding on preserved specimens, destroying those specimens, and with crickets, they're feeding on the shed exoskeletons and the dead crickets at the bottom of your bins. Again, it's not doing a ton of damage, but it is decreasing the value of your product, especially if you're selling for human food. So what do we do to manage those? The simplest way to do it is just to clean bins. At our prototype farm, we've almost completely controlled the domestic population by just sending our farm manager with a shop vac and vacuuming up all the dead crickets every couple of weeks. Again, this is something that doesn't scale. And I know a lot of people will not and cannot seal all the bins here, but that's also been very effective for us, just putting a mesh over the top of our bins, be it an actual lid or just a loose sheet of fabric mesh. And then finally, mechanical. This is not a great option. This is just taking all of your egg flats out of your bins, shaking the dermestids off, and killing the beetles as you find them. These are all things that do not scale to larger operations. We've started researching the use of a few different pesticides at sublethal doses to control these at scale farms. So then flies. I'm sure everybody here has seen a number of flies throughout your farms. I'm not going to talk about every single fly. I did that in the first draft of this presentation. It was 48 slides. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to start with the muscoids. And for the purpose of this talk, I'm including the true muscoids, the house flies, the blue-green bottle flies, flesh flies, but I'm also going to go ahead and lump soldier flies in with that, which, fun fact, come in other colors besides black. They can also be pests. These are all generally found in your decaying organic matter, stuff that you might leave around your farm. And again, they're not super serious vectors of anything. They don't really carry that much disease, though they can. They are important to control for cleanliness standards on your farms. So the easiest way to control these is to remove where they're breeding. The best places where they would breed are piles of grass clippings, piles of yard waste, also drains, and just actual rotting garbage. But we have found these in the space between shelves and walls, just breeding in tiny, tiny little pockets of filth. We found them under a single 2x4 that was left on the floor. And we found a bunch of larvae underneath there. So look for them, seek them out, and kill them when you can find them. Screens, not necessarily on your bins, but around your doors. This is just a containment issue. I'm sure larger farms have already controlled this with double doors and negative pressure gradients. But just using something as simple as a mosquito screen over your doors, one with the little magnets that closes as you go through it, that is actually really effective for keeping these out of your facility since a lot of these are coming from outside. Fans, they don't necessarily blow your flies away, but they agitate the air enough to make your space not very nice for flies. It kind of promotes the flies to get away from your space. And then finally, this is something I just found out last week actually, and two of the actual zoos I spoke to are a huge proponent of these. Gold stick fly traps, they're glorified fly papers, but they're used in very sensitive insect rearing operations that cannot be infected by flies, like the raising of endangered species of butterflies. So you can find on Amazon, there's actually a bunch of sources for them. Phorids, the horrid phorids, we found a few terrible incidences of these. We had some ourselves. These are a serious pest in cricket farms. And they're attracted to fungus, they eat fungus, and they're attracted to decaying protein sources. And at a cricket farm, this is usually your unfertilized and unviable eggs that are decaying in your oviposition pans. They can vector fungus and bacteria into your egg pans, and there they promote putrefaction and spoilage. They're not great to have. You can tell them from a fruit fly, which they look a lot like, by looking at their humped back there. And you could look at their curved ovipods here, but you could also look at how they're kind of darting and not actually flying like you would think of fruit fly flies. They dart back and forth and you can kind of short, erratic movements. So we have had a lot of success controlling with these, and it's all the same stuff I said before for the muskets, fly papers, fly traps, the screens, the fans, the strips, and what I did not mention, the lights. UV lights like you see in a restaurant, except not a bug zapper, but a bug attractant that's paired with some sort of sticky paper. Those are actually kind of anecdotally very effective for these phorids. In addition to your egg-laying substrate, whatever you use, be it peat moss or cocoa or what have you, adding a little bit of barn lime, like we have here, just an agricultural lime amendment, makes your substrate a little bit more alkaline and not quite as attractive to these flies. We're still doing a lot of research with that, and we haven't really worked out the dosage yet. Finally, something we've observed that has worked incredibly well on one scale cricket farm is heat. Our own cricket farm, when we had a phorid problem, I jacked the heat up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very hot. That killed every single phorid in the room, and after a few days, most of everything else. Except some of the eggs were still viable in the room. When we went to another scaled cricket farm, we found that they were keeping their eggs at 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And at that temperature, they didn't even know what a phorid was. They hadn't heard of it. So at that temperature, your eggs do very well, your pinheads do very well, everything else dies immediately. So it's something that you still really need to dial in your dosing with, but heat can be a very attractive option for this. Finally, spiders. And I put spiders, I meant spider, one spider, just one. Pest vulgaris, the cricket thief, which is actually its European common name, fun little fact. They're common in many cricket farms, and they've spread all throughout the world. There's some great literature from the 90s about when they invaded Germany and got everywhere. Naturally, they actually eat other spiders. They're spider predators. They have adapted, though, to cricket farms and can be found in many cricket farms in the US, Europe, and North Africa. They get to be a huge problem when they go unchecked. When their populations go unchecked, they balloon until they're knocking off entire bins of your pinheads, and even just having a few on the farm can inspire predatory behaviors, predator avoidance behaviors in the crickets, which do decrease your yield. So we put a lot into researching the management with these. Again, sealed bins, a lot of people don't like them, but they work extremely well, just sealing our bins for us. Other than that, we use a lot of these little foldable sticky traps. I think we spend less than 10 cents a trap on them, and they last for a couple of months. We put those all along the baseboards, and the spiders will just wander in them as they wander along the baseboards. A huge tenet of integrated pest management is to hit them where they live. They live along baseboards, they live in their harborage, they live in wherever they can hide. So in addition to the sticky traps along baseboards, we've been looking into mite cards. This is another thing that I got from a few different zookeepers that work on insect operations. This is an insecticide-treated card that goes under and around your bins. And a lot of times the spiders will wander into them, but there are other ways that can get into your bins. And then finally, very simply, take out your arborage, clean it out. For ours, we put in big black contractor bags, put it on the roof and let it sit in the sun. And then at a scaled cricket farm, we actually observed them just sweeping down their racks, the racks they put their bins on. This was incredibly effective, and I tore that facility apart and could not find a single one of these spiders. So just get a cobble of broom and sweep down the racks. Now finally, acknowledging that there are plenty of other invertebrate pests out there, plenty of other very important ones, I want to mention rats, because they're pests that often does not get a lot of attention, at least in the relation to crickets, but almost every single farm that we spoke to had dealt with rats as a pest. Maybe not necessarily at high population levels, maybe not even necessarily at significant population levels, but they had dealt with them. For the purpose of this talk, I'll only be speaking about Norway rats and roof rats. And again, for this talk, consider them pretty similar enough that their control is pretty much the same. And they do eat crickets. A few of the farms we spoke to did mention them getting into their cricket bins and causing some damage, but their greatest damage is going to be destroying your bins, destroying your arborage, destroying your stored products, destroying your stored anything, getting into your walls, destroying your walls, destroying the insulation in your walls, and in one very exceptional case, destroying an entire building with all their dead, their filth, their food, and their droppings. I was as surprised. That was nuts. And on top of all that, this is something that is dangerous for your employees. Rats do kind of reservoir a lot of different diseases, so it's not something that's safe to have your employees around. So don't use poisons. Don't do it. And frankly, I don't give a damn about the welfare of these animals. This is so that the rats don't eat a poison, crawl into your walls, die, become a rotting, festering, seeping corpse, and get into your insulation. It's gross, don't do it. They can be used. In certain cases, they work very well. Contact me after the presentation. I'll actually give you the name of a few very, very effective poisons that a few different zoos use. But they're only a very last-ditch effort. The gold standard that pretty much any public health pest control operator will tell you is exclusion. Seal the holes that the rats are coming in. If you type in rat exclusion online, you're going to get about 100 shocking results for spray foam. Don't use that. It lasts for maybe 5 minutes before the rat goes straight through it. It does not work well. They can still get through aluminum. We do have documented cases of the rats getting through aluminum in commercial cricket farms, but it works much better. So like in this bottom picture here, I don't know if everybody can see it, but put some aluminum around there. You want to seal any hole that is larger or the size of a quarter. If it's the size of a quarter, a Norway rat or a roof rat can get inside of it. They're very adaptable animals. And then one other thing I just found a few weeks ago when I spoke to a colleague, it's some very adorable natural enemies. Very adorable. So this, I spoke to somebody who deals with rat populations on a commercial orchard, a commercial apricot orchard. And he said they had a very significant rat pest infestation. He put in an owl box every 30 feet. So a whole bunch of boxes for owls. He said it was an 80% decrease in rat populations. So very effective. Granted, this is an outdoor operation. I'm sure most of you guys aren't doing crickets outdoors, but it's still very, very significant. I forgot to mention defensible space, and this is a building code issue in a lot of states and municipalities. You need to have some cleared space between your building and the brush. If the brush goes right up into your building, that's plenty of shelter space for the rats to walk on in. I usually suggest 10 feet of defensible space, but really any amount will work to some extent. So there are many, many other pests out there. I just want to very quickly mention a few before we get out of here and we can all go to dinner and see Joseph and everything. But wasps. I'm very interested in doing some wasp research with parasitic, parasitoid, and actually predatory wasps. So these parasitoid wasps, this is a picture of a wasp from the genus Leospex. And it's a genus that they just added 9 new species to within the past 10 years. It's found in the southern US, and it parasitizes crickets. So if you look at that cricket in the bottom corner there is a wasp larvae exploding out the side of the cricket. The wasp lays its eggs inside the cricket. The larvae eats the inside out of the cricket while keeping it alive until it keeps the cricket alive long enough to explode outside and become another wasp. I've been trapping for these on a few different cricket farms that we've been speaking to. I think I may have found one so far, which I'm very excited about, but I still need to go through an idea. If anybody else is interested in helping with this project, please let me know. I have all my own black lights. Come out there and catch the monsters. I'm sure a lot of you people who also rear mealworms and superworms have seen these. These are different meal moths. They're very tasty insects themselves, especially if you get the larvae. But they're pretty much in any starchy substance or fibrous substance that you have that you store. They're in your grain, they're in your flour, they're in all that. Seal up your containers of grains and flours and starchy materials as best you can. Keep them in an inhospitable environment, so like either a fridge or a very, very hot room, almost hot enough to spoil the material itself. And you should be able to at least minimize your moth population. Then finally, pigeons. If you're stupid enough to put a cricket farm in the middle of San Francisco, you might have a pigeon farm. And while I would really like to suggest a pelican, I can't. I would say remove your roost, encourage more birds of prey, owl boxes, make your environment inhospitable for pigeons. So with integrated pest management, I read the thing at first, and it sounded really complex and almost completely unable to be implemented, way too fancy. It's not. It's just using best practices, common sense practices, to best control the pest on your cricket farm. The biggest themes around these are removing places for the pests to hide, discouraging the pests from coming there in the first place, and then finally excluding more pests from coming in. This is all part of working smarter, not harder, and as we're all coming together to grow these very difficult insects and scale a very new industry, I'm sure we can all agree that we don't need any more on the plates. So that I'd like to acknowledge a few people that have helped me out in this. I'm sure some of you know Dina Wise. She was at Light Engine a few years ago. And many of our partner farms have a lot more people I did not list here. That, if I have time,